This podcast is brought to you by sarahraven.com, which is home to everything you need for a truly beautiful and productive garden. You'll also find great and essential gardening kit and stylish, lovely things to have in your house to bring the outside indoors, all inspired by the garden and the house being tied together. There's also plenty of garden inspiration, how-to videos and specialist growing guides. So head over to sarahraven.com today to discover even more. Welcome to Grow, Cook, Eat, Arrange, the podcast of me, Sarah Raven, and various different guests. And today I'm joined by Tom Stimpson, who lots of you who listen regularly will have met before. So Tom is our Head of Horticulture and works hugely with me in creating collections at Perchill. Oh, first of all, hello, Tom.
Hi Sarah.
Hello. And he has the most exquisite and fantastic garden in Ely. And tell us the size, Tom, just to recap.
Oh, it's a proper pint pot size garden. It's 10 metres by 7.
Yeah.
So it's quite compact and tiny.
Yeah. And it's a real sun trap at the back of the house. And then he goes straight onto the street at the front and there's a window box and he has doorstep pots, which apparently don't go walkies, which I would have worried about, but they don't, which is fantastic. And then the other thing is down the side of his house, he's end of terrace. He has a bed that's shady for quite a bit of the day, but actually gets enough sun that he's sort of almost guerrilla gardened it. I'm not sure whether you actually own it. Do you, Tom?
I do own that little bit.
You do?
But we're gradually creeping out further and further.
There's a car park around the back of his house, and he's going to have taken over the whole of that within a second. But anyway, so if you get the picture, you can see the spire of Ely Cathedral just about over to the back of the house. And it's very much a classic English town garden and really lovely, elegant terraced house. Mid-19th century, is it, Tom? That
Yes.
kind of thing?
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, I remember opening the gate into the back garden for the first time. And you could tell that somebody who loved their environment was living there because of this bit that Tom has sort of made into his garden, although it's not inside the fencing. But you then walk into this absolute jewel box of beauty, of flowers, of birds, of bees, of butterflies. And it just feels like an absolute oasis with, you know, a relatively busy road off to the front of the house. But round the back, it just feels absolutely wondrous and peaceful and beautiful and packed full of fantastic combinations. And so as we get through into the early part of the summer, I thought it'd be really lovely to talk to Tom and sort of take us all back there again, having talked about it in previous seasons, and find out from Tom what he's growing there this year and what's new and what's old and what he's learnt and what he's adding to. So if I just get Tom to talk you through the different areas and then we'll talk about what's in them. So first of all, Tom, talk us through that north-facing bed that's outside the garden.
Yes, so this is a bed that runs along a pathway along the full length of the garden and then kind of snakes around the side a little bit. And that's the bit I'm sort of developing a little bit further. But it's a wonderful bed. It's a wonderful bed in spring because it's full of bulbs and hellebores. But in last year, I created an area to sit 3 big what I call Whopper pots, and they are really big. They're about 3 feet high by about 2 feet in diameter, and I love to fill them with big things. I think one of the mistakes people often make is a small space should have small things, and I'm exactly the opposite. So even though my space is small, I love a big statement. And that bed has got these 3 pots, spaced pretty equally along it. And this year, they're going to be full of salvias and dahlias.
Great. Last year it was Cabert, wasn't it?
It was Cabert and pelargoniums.
Yeah.
And we had so many comments as people walked by. But this year, I think a change. And I want the bright, vibrant colours of dahlias and intermingled with salvia, I think is going to be a real proper wowie sort of display through summer and will last for months and months. That's the key. I want things that are going to last a long time.
And also good for pollinators, aren't they? All the varieties. So will you talk us through the actual varieties that you've chosen?
So yes, in these pots, so all three are going to have our new salvia, which is Salvia Berry Blast, which is sort of a cousin of Amistad, but more compact, a little bit more manageable, but still has presence and generosity about it.
Yeah.
And that variety is going to feature in all three pots.
And just to differentiate between it and Amistad as well as the size, it has the petals the colour of an amethyst, doesn't it? A sort of absolutely wonderful, rich purple.
Yes, they are. And they match the dark calyx of the flowers as well.
Yeah.
And that vivid magenta purple of the flower, which is so striking. It's an absolute star, a real winner. And will thrive on almost a bit of neglect, really. I mean, as long as they're watered and fed, but pretty much will care and look after itself.
And so what dahlias are going to go with that?
So I tend to prefer, I love all dahlias, but I do have a real tendency to love the single-flowered types. So this year, I've picked 3 of our new ones. And one pot is going to feature Berry Blast with Princess Nadine.
Lovely.
I love this variety. Do you remember when we saw it in Holland?
Yeah.
That gorgeous stem with the flowers sort of billowing in the wind.
It's
Beautiful.
very elegant. Yeah.
And then the next one, I'm going to have Dahlia Jonathan Buckley, who I've had the good fortune since I've worked for you to do lots of filming and photo shoots with Jonathan. And I love the dahlia that we named after him. Absolutely beautiful. And then the third one is going to be Mrs. Amy, which is quite dark and an anemone type and very richly coloured. So although all 3 different dahlias, they're all tonally beautiful together.
It's the colour of a summer pudding with a bit of peach in it, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Jonathan Buckley's got a sort of almost peachy, nectarine-y flavour. Yes. I mean, colour. But Mrs. Amy and Princess Nadine and the Berry Blast are really rich, saturated, sort of purple, magenta, crimson, aren't they?
Yeah, my favourite colour. I love those colours. And there'll be a really striking thing. When the sun picks up sort of from late morning through to sort of early afternoon, they'll shine and glimmer. I love that. Absolute joy.
Fantastic. And then if we open your gate and we walk into the garden, and so your back door is just behind me on my left, and I'm looking out down into the tiny, unbelievably beautiful garden, you've got 3 more Whopper pots. Well, actually 4, haven't you?
Yes.
So talk us through those now in the garden. So they're big statement pieces, and they're not to say that we won't move on to the borders, but tell us what's in those 4 pots now.
So again, I'm going to feature these with dahlias and salvias.
Yeah.
And this particular dahlia that's going to feature in 3 of the 4 pots is a dahlia you and I spotted a couple of years ago almost. It started its life and gradually through trials that we saw in Holland. And I think when we saw it at Perch Hill last year, it kind of absolutely nailed it for us. And this one is called Tom's Choice.
After you.
After me. And I'm so hugely honoured and thankful. I'm really privileged to have this named after me. And I love it. I can't stop smiling when I'm talking about it. It's, again, a single-flowered type.
Yeah.
And it has like a lovely golden hue in the centre that sort of spills into a lovely rosy crimson on the outer petals. And then on the petal reverse, a lovely bright crimson, which I love. Dark-stemmed, delicate, well-branched, absolutely loads of flowers. I can't wait to get this in the pot.
Yeah. So before we named it after Tom, it's called Tom's Choice. We referred to it as the toffee apple because there's something about it, you know, that kind of bonfire Halloween kind of toffee caramelly colour, but with some of the richness that you somehow get often when the toffee gets slightly sort of burnt, that lovely rich brown conker colour. And then in Tom's dahlia, there's also a little bit of tiny bit of gold, and as he says, this beautiful, beautiful peachy colour. And it's in the anemone flower group, so it's very unusual in the anemone flower group in that it's actually got a very elegant petals. A lot of the anemone flowers are quite just simple circles, almost like semicircles of petals. But in Tom's dahlia, they're really graceful and elegant and much more pointy, which is pretty unusual. Totally Tangerine has sort of a little bit more towards that shape, and then it has that classic anemone flowered centre where you get really a stack of nectaries full of pollen and nectar in the tubes, and it has a whirl of sort of Coloretti style petaloids as well. So it's simple and yet complex at the same time. And unfortunately, we haven't got quite enough to release it in 2025, but it's going to be, well, we're hoping on the front cover of our catalogue in 2026. So it's to come, but it's super exciting. So that sounds wonderful. And with the salvias.
Yes, so I'm going to do one pot featuring it with Salvia Late Garda. So these pots are all going to be a little bit clashy, but they do work. I feel all quite confident.
Rich palette, aren't they?
Yes. So I'm going to use Tom's Choice and Late Garda in one pot, and then Tom's Choice with Salvia Love and Wishes, which is a sort of rosy crimson salvia, hugely prolific. It's one of my favourites. And then the final one is going to be a bit of a contrast. We're going to more of a purple colour, and I'm going to use Salvia Lake Aniga. And both Lake Aniga and Lake Garda are from the Salgon series. And I think as modern salvia breeding goes, that the Salgon series is one of the best in terms of huge amounts of flower, and plants have a lovely well-branched, quite neat habit, but not too neat that they become too precise. They still have that lovely salvia generosity about them. And so those three pots, I think, are going to look really fabulous.
And do you know, the other thing that I've noticed with the Salgon series is I think they're less fragile. So what I mean by that is I absolutely love Amistad, but I do find when it's windy, you get quite a few branches breaking. And whereas with these, they seem to be a bit more willowy, that they can take a little bit more weather. And whether that's because they're compact or whether they've got almost a little bit less lignin in their cell walls, I don't know. But that seems to be a thing that they really can keep going, looking good well into November, even with the autumn gales. So, I mean, Amistad's pretty good, but the Salgoon series are even better, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think they're less brittle, and I think that's been a definite breeding plus point.
You've seen that as well.
Them. Yeah, absolutely.
And then your final big pot inside the garden.
So that's going to be planted with I'm going to use Salvia Berry Blast again, but also I'm going to feature a dahlia called Mystic Wizard. And we saw all the mystics last year, didn't we? Yeah. When we were in Holland, and I had a group of them growing in my garden last year, just as a bit of a trial, really. And I know you grew Mystic Wizard, didn't you, at Perch Hill?
Loved it.
Fabulous. And at one of our photo shoots in Ely last year, we photographed a vase full of Dahlia Mystic Wizard and Berry Blast together. And both of us said there and then, we have to do that as a planted pot combination. Yeah. So that's what I'm going to do. And Mystic Wizard is a lovely dark flower. So
the colour of Liberty bags is what I would call it.
That wonderful
that purple.
Yeah. Yeah. So that will be, the final big pot. So it's all big and bold and drama.
Absolutely fantastic. And then just sort of maybe relatively briefly, can you just explain what you're going to put in the two beds? So as I'm looking out from Tom's house, I'm looking out the kitchen door, and they've got a beautiful sitting room, dining room off to the left. And I'm looking down the garden towards the car park. And in the far corner, which, as Thomas said, is only 10 metres away, is quite a large bed with 2 of these big pots in it, and then nearer the house with another big pot in it. And you can see more about all of this if you want to look on the website, because we've got lots of pictures of Tom's garden, is another bed. And so he's done 2 different designs for each of those beds. So first of all, the more distant one, Tom, down the bottom of the garden.
Okay, well, this bed is sort of semicircular in shape. It has a path that snakes through it, so we've got easy access for cutting and deadheading. And this is all about more sort of muted tones. So it's blues, whites, and soft pinks. So it will include things like the honker dahlias, Dahlia honker fragile, and Dahlia honker pink, and that's the real jolt of colour. Then it will feature salvias, again, butterfly blue and Phyllis fancy, 2 of my favourites, and I love those 2 in a vase together. That bed it's got to look lovely, but also I love to be able to walk into it and cut flowers to bring inside. That's absolutely vital and important to me. I love fiddling about doing that.
Yeah.
And then I'll have things like verbenas and asters and phlox for fragrance, again to bulk up the cut flower material. But visually, they all look and harmonise well together, and they're all underplanted then with Nepeta Kit Kat, which is a lovely, a little bit more of a dwarf variety, but huge amounts of flower. And I absolutely love it because you can hack it back, and within a few weeks, it's back again to how it was. So that'll be that bed.
Quite a lot of that, Tom, is already there. And so you're enhancing it with some salvia cuttings and some of the dahlias, but
yes,
quite a lot of this perennial there. And I remember Tom's partner is called Colin, and I remember him saying we've got to have lots of blues and mauves and purples in the garden. However, we love the strong, rich colours, but because they are best for pollinators. And of course, I'm sure you all know that the blue spectrum is absolutely brilliant for bees and butterflies and really draws them in. And so that the theme of the aster, monk, the salvia that Tom's already mentioned, the Nepeta Kit Kat and the phlox, and the verbenas, they will all be absolute meccas for any of the pollinators. So then the small bed nearer the house, just as you come out of the kitchen door.
So this bed is, much smaller, and I tend to use it for annuals, really. So this year I'm going to do sort of a theme of orange, blue, white and green. And I want to try our new Helianthus Saluna bronze. And I love Helianthus, but I've always steered away from them because they tend to be a little bit too big. But this one is shorter, only to 60 centimetres or so ideal for my space. And then I shall weave some Orlea grandiflora through it, along with some Salvia viridis Blue Monday. I have to have that because, it's kind of indestructible. And I love cutting little posies of it and having it in vases to place on the dining room table. Then I also am going to include some Bells of Ireland to go through that because I love the acid green colour. And again, I want to cut it. And I couldn't have that bed without some form of antirrhinum. Last year, it was quite vibrant, sort of crimson and burgundies. This year, I'm going with white, Chantilly white. And I love the Chantilly series. I love the shape of the flowers, but also it's very well branched and doesn't get too big, but big enough for me to cut.
And a little bit of perfume too. So the only thing that is tiny a bit worrying for me there is I think the Orlea may well go over before quite a lot of the other stuff. But maybe that doesn't matter if you've got the antirrhinum because you've got the white from that anyway.
Yes, exactly.
So you have a succession. Great. I mean, that sounds really beautiful. And then finally, Tom has a ton of small pots. So whether as you come out of his kitchen door, there's a little shelf that takes 3 pretty terracotta pots, almost like a window box, but contains 3 different containers, basically. And then he has a table, which often is used for eating, but if it is, then the pots are put down on the ground and they can eat on it, but that's covered in pots. And then he has, as I mentioned, round on the doorstep, he has pots. And also down in the middle of the garden around the Whopper pots, he has really quite a lot of terracotta and zinc other pots. So what's going in all of those, Tom, the smaller ones?
So I want to grow some more fuchsias this year. I love fuchsias. Not the big and blousy, but the sort of delicate and discreet. And although I say delicate, they're, I guess, really as tough as old boots, really. But varieties like Dying Embers, Silver Lining, I want all of those varieties. And also they're good for a bit of a shady spot. So in a sort of a bit of a shady area closer to the house, I'm going to have a table with those displayed on. I also then couldn't have any summer without pelargoniums. And for me, the scented leaf types are still my favourites. So I will still grow a Tower of Roses, Prince of Orange and Sweet Mimosa, my absolute favourites. But I'm going to try some new ones this year that I've picked up and collected last year. And one of those is Pelargonium grandiflorum. And although not a scented leaf, a most beautiful white flower with lovely red veining. I want to try Pelargonium citradorium. Again, I almost feel that's stronger than a Tower of Roses, a little bit more intense and sweeter.
Yeah.
And then I also want to try Pelargonium fragrans. And I'm going to put that in a hanging basket. I'm not always a huge fan of hanging baskets, but I quite like the wicker ones. And I think fragrans will, with its lovely sort of grey blue, will just create a nice lax feel. So I'm going to give those a go as well. And there'll be loads more stuff that I will feed in as we go.
Oh, Tom, that just sounds so lovely. And maybe we'll do a recap in, once it's all come to fruition, perhaps in September or October, we'll do a recap on the podcast and just see what has been a triumphant success. And perhaps we can have some photos by then to upload. But thank you. That was very inspiring. And you've got to remember, everybody, that this is a garden in miniature. I mean, it is like one of those beautiful, beautiful Indian paintings that really is a miniature, but it's still just jam-packed full of beauty, of bees, of butterflies, of colour, of flower shapes, of flower scents. It is a mini, mini paradise. Thank you, Tom, and see you soon.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks so much for listening to Grow Cook Eat Arrange, the podcast of me, Sarah Raven. And today it was Tom Stimpson, who's our Head of Horticulture. And I hope you enjoyed listening to our recap on his wonderful garden in Ely. Next week, I'm on my own and I'm going to really appraise the incredible value of biennials in a garden, because of course now is biennial sowing time. So I hope you'll listen then. You can find more information, photos and advice sheets on all the plants and recipes we talk about on this podcast by heading to the show notes or at sarahraven.com/podcast.